It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in Maple Grove. The birds were chirping, the grass was green, and the air smelled like summer. Jake Miller woke up early, rubbed his eyes, and smiled. Today was the day for his big garage sale. He was just a regular guy, or so everyone thought. He wanted to make a few bucks by selling some old stuff he didn't need anymore. Simple, right? Oh, but there was so much more to the story. Jake had a secret. A big, exciting secret that nobody in the sleepy little neighborhood knew about. And that secret? It was about to shake things up and turn this quiet day into total craziness. Jake lived in a small house on Oak Street. It had a little garage out front, and that's where he set everything up. He dragged out a wobbly table and started piling stuff on it. There were old toys like a beat-up toy truck with one wheel missing. He found a rusty bike that creaked when you pedaled it. There was even a funny-looking lamp his grandma gave him. She always said, "Jake, this lamp is vintage. It's special." Jake didn't know what vintage really meant, but he nodded and kept it anyway. Now, it was time to sell it. He didn't think any of the stuff was fancy. It was just junk to him. But to the people walking by, maybe they'd see treasure. Maple Grove was a quiet place. Kids rode their bikes down the street, and old folks sat on porches sipping lemonade. Everyone knew everyone. Neighbors waved hello, and dogs barked at squirrels. It was the kind of place where nothing big ever happened. Or at least, that's what people thought. Jake liked it here. It felt safe and calm. But today? Today was going to be different. Way different. He didn't tell a soul what he was hiding. Not his best friend, not his mom, not even the mailman who stopped by every day. Nope. This secret was all his, and he couldn't wait to see what happened when it came out. So, Jake kept working. He put up a big sign that said, "Garage Sale. Everything must go," in bright red marker. He taped it to a tree so everyone could see it. Then he grabbed a box of comic books, some with torn covers, and stacked them neatly. He found an old radio that didn't work anymore and set it out too. Maybe someone will want it, he thought. He even pulled out a pair of roller skates with laces all tangled up. Piece by piece, the table filled up. It looked like a mess, but Jake didn't care. He just wanted to sell it all and make a little money. Easy peasy, right? Well, not quite. Here's the thing, Jake wasn't just selling stuff to clean out his garage. Nope. There was more to it. A lot more. He had something up his sleeve, something sneaky and wild. Nobody walking by had any clue. Not the lady with the big hat who stopped to look at the lamp. Not the kid who poked at the toy truck. Not even the grumpy old man who mumbled about too much noise. They all thought Jake was just a regular guy with some old junk. But oh boy, were they wrong. Jake's secret was like a bomb waiting to go off. And when it did, this boring Saturday was going to turn into the talk of the town. Picture this, the sun is shining, the table is ready, and Jake is standing there with a little smile. He's wearing a plain blue shirt and shorts, looking like any other kid from Maple Grove. People start showing up. A mom with 2 little kids walks over. "How much for the bike?" she asks. Jake shrugs and says, $5. She nods and digs in her purse. A guy with a beard picks up the comic books and flips through them. "Cool," he says, and hands Jake $1. It's all going fine. Normal. Boring, even. But Jake's heart is beating a little faster. He knows something they don't. He's waiting. Waiting for the right moment. What moment? You'll see soon. Now, let's talk about the neighborhood for a second. Maple Grove wasn't big. It had one little park with a rusty slide, a grocery store where everyone shopped, and a bunch of houses that all looked kind of the same. People here liked rules. They liked things neat and tidy. That's why the HOA, the group that bossed everyone around, was such a big deal. They told you how tall your grass could be or what color your mailbox had to be. Silly stuff like that. Jake didn't mind the rules too much. He just kept his head down and did his thing. But today, those rules were about to cause some trouble. Big trouble. And Jake's secret? It was tied to all of it. As the morning went on, more people stopped by. A girl with pigtails giggled at the roller skates. An old lady asked about the lamp. "Is it really vintage?" she said, squinting at it. Jake just smiled and said, That's what my grandma says. She laughed and bought it for $2. Everything was chill. The sun climbed higher, and Jake sipped some water from a bottle. He looked normal. He acted normal. But inside, he was buzzing with excitement. Something was coming. Something huge. And nobody saw it yet. Not a single person guessed that this garage sale wasn't what it seemed. So, what do you think Jake's hiding? Is it something funny? Something scary? Something totally nuts? I bet you're curious now. Don't go anywhere, because the story is just getting started. Imagine you're right there with Jake, watching the people, hearing the birds, feeling the sun. What would you ask him if you could? Hey, Jake, what's the deal? Maybe he'd wink and say, stick around and find out. And that's exactly what you should do, stick around. Because what's coming next? Oh, it's wild. It's messy. And it's going to make you say, no way. See, Jake's garage sale wasn't just about old toys and a rusty bike. It was a cover. A trick. A sneaky little plan. But for what? That's the big question. And here's a hint, it's got something to do with the cops. Yup, the police. But don't worry, I won't spill it all yet. We've got a long way to go, and every step is going to pull you in deeper. This ordinary day in Maple Grove. It's about to turn into total chaos. And Jake? He's right in the middle of it, grinning like he knows the punchline to a joke nobody else gets. The sun was shining bright over Maple Grove, and Jake's garage sale was buzzing with a few people poking around his stuff. Everything seemed fine until Linda Harper showed up. Linda was the boss of the HOA, which is the group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Everyone called her Karen when she wasn't around because she loved bossing people around. She was the kind of person who'd yell if your grass was too long or your trash can was out too early. And right now, she was mad. Really mad. Linda marched across the street like she owned the whole world. Her shoes clicked on the pavement, and her eyes were locked on Jake. She held a clipboard tight in her hands, like it was her superhero shield. When she got close, she stopped and glared at Jake. It was the kind of look that said, "You're in big trouble, kid." Jake was just standing there, setting out some old comic books with ripped covers. He didn't even look up at first. But Linda? She was ready to start a fight. "This is against the rules," she snapped. Her voice was loud and sharp, like a teacher catching you chewing gum in class. She pointed at Jake's sign, the one he'd made with red marker that said, "Garage sale, everything must go." She waved her finger at it like it was the worst thing she'd ever seen. "You didn't get my approval, young man," she said, crossing her arms. Her face was getting redder by the second, and her eyes were all squinted. She looked like she thought Jake had just kicked her dog or something awful like that. Jake didn't freak out, though. Nope. He just smiled a little, sneaky smile, and kept stacking his comic books. "It's my yard, Linda," he said. His voice was calm and easy, like he was talking about the weather. He didn't yell back. He didn't even stop what he was doing. He just kept going, like Linda's big mad moment didn't bother him one bit. That made her even madder. She huffed and puffed, her cheeks puffing out like a balloon about to pop. "Oh, we'll see about that," she said, and she yanked her phone out of her pocket. Now, Linda wasn't playing around. She held that phone like it was a magic wand that could fix everything. She started tapping on it, muttering under her breath. "No approval. No permission. This is ridiculous," she grumbled. A few people shopping at the garage sale turned to look. The lady with the big hat raised her eyebrows. The kid poking the toy truck stopped and stared. Even the grumpy old man who'd been complaining about noise peeked over. Linda didn't care who was watching. She was on a mission to stop Jake, and she was sure she'd win. But here's the thing, Jake wasn't worried. Not even a little. While Linda stood there, acting like the queen of Maple Grove, Jake just kept smiling. He grabbed a beat-up old radio and set it on the table. He dusted off the rusty bike with his hand. He acted like Linda wasn't even there, yelling and waving her clipboard. Why wasn't he scared? Why wasn't he arguing back? Oh, there's a reason, a big, juicy reason. But you don't get to know it yet. It's coming, though. Just wait. Linda kept going. "I make the rules around here," she said, pointing at herself. "And you? You're just a kid who thinks he can do whatever he wants. She flipped through her clipboard, looking at papers like they held all the answers. Garage sales need permission. It's in the handbook. Page 12, rule number 7, she barked. Jake shrugged. Didn't read the handbook, he said, super chill. That made Linda's face turn from red to almost purple. She looked like a tomato about to burst. By now, a little crowd was watching. The mom with 2 kids whispered to the bearded guy flipping through comics. She's at it again, the mom said, rolling her eyes. The bearded guy nodded and smirked. Everyone knew Linda was a big deal in the neighborhood, but not everyone liked her. She loved rules too much. And right now, she was making a big show of it. I'm calling someone about this, she said, holding up her phone like it was a trophy. You'll see, Jake Miller. You can't break the rules and get away with it. Jake leaned against his table and crossed his arms. Go ahead, Linda, he said. His voice was still calm, like he was daring her to do it. That threw her off. She blinked at him, confused for a second. Why wasn't he begging her to stop? Why wasn't he saying sorry? Most people would be nervous if Linda got mad at them. She was loud and pushy, and she usually got her way. But Jake? He was cool as a cucumber. He even waved at a little girl who was giggling at the roller skates. $2, he told her mom, like nothing was wrong. Linda didn't like that. Not one bit. She started pacing back and forth, her shoes clicking louder. You think you're so smart, she muttered. Selling all this junk without asking me first. Who do you think you are? She pointed at the sign again. Everything must go? Huh? We'll see about that. She was talking to herself now, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd was growing. More neighbors peeked out their windows or wandered over. They wanted to see what the fuss was about. Jake just kept doing his thing. He handed the toy truck to the kid who'd been poking it. $1, he said with a grin. The kid's eyes lit up, and he ran to his mom with it. Linda spun around and glared. You're ignoring me, she shouted. This is my neighborhood, and I say what goes. She was so mad, her voice cracked a little. But Jake? He didn't even look at her. He grabbed a stack of comics and handed them to the bearded guy. $3, he said, still smiling. That was it for Linda. She'd had enough. She held up her phone and started dialing. I'm calling right now, she said, her voice shaking with anger. You'll be sorry, Jake. This sale is done. She tapped the screen hard, like she was trying to break it. The crowd went quiet. Everyone watched, waiting to see what would happen. Would Jake finally get mad? Would he try to stop her? Nope. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. Why wasn't he sweating it? Why was he so calm when Linda was losing her mind? Oh, there's a secret behind that smile. A big one. Linda thought she was in charge, but she didn't know what Jake knew. She didn't see what was coming. She thought her phone call was going to ruin his day, but Jake? He was ready. Ready for something wild. Something that would flip this whole mess upside down. What was it? Don't worry, you'll find out soon. Really soon. Linda finished dialing and held the phone to her ear. Yes, hello, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I need someone out here right now. She glared at Jake like she'd already won. But Jake? He just winked at the crowd. A little, sneaky wink. And that's when you know something big is about to happen. Something Linda's not ready for. Stick around, because this is where it gets good. Karen yanked her phone out of her purse like it was a superhero gadget. She tapped the screen super fast, her fingers moving like lightning. I'm calling 911, she yelled loud enough for the whole street to hear. She held the phone to her ear and started talking in a big, bossy voice. Yes, officer, there's an illegal event happening right now. Right here on Maple Street. It's a garage sale, and it's breaking all the rules. She sounded like she thought Timmy's little tables of toys and comics were the worst crime ever. The neighbors heard her shouting and started poking their heads out. Some opened their curtains just a tiny bit, peeking like sneaky spies. Others stepped onto their porches, whispering to each other. What's going on? One lady said to her husband. Is that Karen yelling again? her husband whispered back. They all stared at Timmy's yard, where old toys, a rusty lamp, and stacks of comic books sat on wobbly tables. It didn't look like a big deal to them, but Karen was acting like it was the end of the world. Timmy, though. He didn't even blink. He just kept stacking his comic books, nice and neat, like nothing was wrong. He picked up a Spider-Man comic, brushed some dust off it, and set it on the pile. Then he grabbed a Batman one and did the same thing. He wasn't mad. He wasn't scared. He was cool as a cucumber, like he knew something nobody else did. His hands moved slow and steady, and a tiny smile stayed on his face. What was he thinking? Why wasn't he worried? Karen was calling the police, but Timmy acted like it was just another sunny day. Now, here's the thing Karen didn't see, and oh boy, it's a good one. Across the street, parked under a big shady tree, was a police car. Yep, a real police cruiser, all black and white with shiny lights on top. It had been there for a while, quiet as a mouse. Inside, 2 officers sat sipping coffee from big cups. One had a mustache, and the other wore sunglasses. They weren't jumping out or rushing over. They were just watching, chilling like it was no big deal. Their windows were cracked open a little, and they could hear every word Karen was yelling into her phone. Timmy had seen that car earlier. Way before Karen started her big scene, when he was setting up his tables, he'd looked up and spotted it. His sharp eyes caught the glint of sunlight on the car's hood. And guess what? He didn't freak out. He didn't run over to beg them to leave. Nope. He just waved. A little wave, like you'd give a friend. The officer with the mustache waved back, real quick, then went back to his coffee. Why did Timmy wave? Why weren't the cops mad? Something sneaky was going on, and Karen had no clue. Karen kept barking into her phone. Yes, it's a disturbance. There's junk everywhere. This kid didn't ask the HOA, and I'm in charge of the rules around here. She stomped her foot, her flip-flops smacking the ground. She pointed at Timmy's tables like they were a giant mess, even though everything was pretty tidy. Send someone quick, she added, then hung up with a huff. She crossed her arms and glared at Timmy, waiting for him to cry or run away. But Timmy? He didn't budge. He picked up an old toy car, spun its wheels with his finger, and set it down gently. That little smile never left his face. The neighbors were getting nosier now. A man in a red hat leaned over his fence, squinting at the police car. Hey, are those cops already here? He whispered to his wife. She shrugged and said, maybe they're just resting. Another lady down the street pulled out her own phone and started recording, giggling a little. This is gonna be good, she said to her dog, who barked once. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Would the police come roaring in with sirens? Would Karen win? Or was something else about to go down? Timmy glanced at the police car again, just for a second. His eyes twinkled like he had a secret treasure map in his pocket. He didn't say a word, but you could tell he wasn't worried one bit. The officers in the car didn't move yet either. The mustache guy took another sip of coffee, and the sunglasses guy tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. They looked relaxed, like they were at a movie, not a crime scene. What was their deal? Why were they just sitting there? And why did Timmy wave at them like they were buddies? Karen started pacing back and forth, her flip-flops flapping louder. You're in big trouble, kid, she said, wagging her finger at Timmy. When the police get here, they'll shut this down fast. You can't just do whatever you want. She tossed her hair and smirked, thinking she'd won already. She didn't even look across the street. She didn't see the police car. She didn't notice the officers watching her every move. She was too busy being loud and bossy to spot the trap she was walking into. Timmy grabbed a stack of Pokemon cards and fanned them out on the table, making them look extra cool for anyone who might buy them. A little kid with a dollar bill ran up, eyes wide. Can I have these? He asked. Timmy nodded and took the dollar, still calm as ever. Thanks, the kid said, running off happy. Karen spun around and shouted, see? He's selling stuff. That's not allowed. But Timmy just kept going, like her words were buzzing flies he could ignore. The clock was ticking. Every second brought Karen closer to a big surprise. The neighbors leaned in closer, their whispers getting louder. Why's that police car just sitting there? One guy asked. Maybe they're waiting for something, his friend said, scratching his head. They didn't know it yet, but Timmy did. He'd seen the car. He'd waved. And he wasn't scared. Whatever was coming, he was ready for it. Karen's phone beeped, and she checked it quick. They're on their way, she said, grinning like she'd just won a prize. She didn't know the police were already there, watching her make a fool of herself. Timmy stacked one last comic book, a Superman one, and leaned back, crossing his arms. His smile got a tiny bit bigger. The officers in the car set their coffee cups down. Their hands moved to the door handles. Something big was about to happen, and Karen was the only one who didn't see it coming. What was Timmy's secret? Why were the cops so chill? The answers were sneaking closer, and the whole street was about to find out. The police car doors creaked open with a loud clunk. Out stepped a tall man in a blue uniform, Officer Mike. His badge sparkled in the bright sunlight like a superhero's shield. He wasn't just any cop, though. He was Timmy's uncle. Yep, Timmy's very own Uncle Mike, with a big grin on his face. He walked over to Timmy's tables, his boots crunching on the gravel. Hey, Timmy, he said, his voice loud and friendly. How's business going today? Karen's mouth fell open so wide you could have tossed a baseball in there. She stood frozen, her phone still in her hand, like she couldn't believe her eyes. Her flip-flops stopped flapping, and her bossy yelling turned into nothing but a tiny squeak. She blinked fast, staring at Officer Mike like he'd just popped out of a magic trick. The neighbors watching from their porches and windows gasped all at once, like they were in a movie and the best part just started. Timmy looked up at his uncle and pointed right at Karen. She says my sale's illegal, Uncle Mike, he said, his voice calm but sneaky. What do you think about that? He didn't yell or cry, he just smiled a little, like he knew something big was coming. His finger stayed pointed at Karen, and everyone turned to see what Officer Mike would do next. Mike crossed his arms and turned to Karen. His eyebrows went up high, like he was waiting for her to say something smart. Ma'am, he said, nice and slow, this kid's got every right to sell his stuff. I checked the rules myself. You got a problem with that? His voice was strong, like a teacher telling you to sit down and listen. He didn't shout, but you could tell he meant business. His badge glinted again as he stood there, tall and proud, right next to Timmy. Karen's face turned redder than a ripe tomato sitting in the sun. She opened her mouth to talk, but all that came out was a weird little stutter. But. The HOA, rules, she mumbled, tripping over her words like she'd forgotten how to speak. Her hands shook a little, and her phone almost slipped out of her fingers. She looked around, hoping someone would help her, but the neighbors were too busy staring with wide eyes. Nobody said a word to back her up. Timmy wasn't just some kid anymore, not to anyone watching. He had backup, and not just any backup, police backup. His uncle was right there, standing up for him like a hero in a comic book. Karen thought she'd caught Timmy breaking the rules, but she'd walked right into a trap. She'd called 911, thinking the police would come running to shut everything down. But guess what? The police were already here, and they were on Timmy's side. The other officer, the one with the sunglasses, stepped out of the car too. He leaned against the door, sipping his coffee, watching like it was a funny show. He didn't say anything, but you could tell he was with Officer Mike. The two of them made Karen look tiny, like a mouse caught sneaking cheese. The neighbors started whispering again, louder this time. That's his uncle, one lady said, her jaw dropping. No way, a man in a red hat shouted, slapping his knee. Karen's in trouble now, a kid with a soccer ball cheered. Officer Mike tilted his head, still waiting for Karen to answer. Well, ma'am, he said. You got anything to say? His voice was calm, but it had a little edge, like he was daring her to argue. Karen's eyes darted around left, right, up, down like she was looking for a way to escape. Her face got even redder, if that was possible, and her flip-flops shuffled on the ground. I didn't know, she finally blurted out, throwing her hands up. I thought he was breaking the rules. Timmy chuckled, just a little laugh, quiet and sneaky. He picked up a toy truck from his table and spun its wheels with his finger. I told you it was fine, he said to Karen, shrugging like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal, and everyone knew it. The neighbors started clapping, slow at first, then faster. "Go, Timmy," a girl with pigtails yelled. "You showed her," a man with a dog shouted. The whole street was buzzing now, like a party had just started. Karen dropped her phone into her purse and took a step back. This is ridiculous," she huffed, but her voice was shaky. She wasn't the boss anymore, she was just a lady who'd made a big mistake. Officer Mike shook his head a little, like he felt sorry for her, but not too sorry. "Next time, check before you call us," he said, tapping his badge. "We've got better things to do than chase garage sales." The trap was perfect. Karen had dialed 911, thinking she'd win the day. She thought the police would roll up, lights flashing, and shut Timmy down. But Timmy had a secret weapon, Uncle Mike. He'd known the cops were there all along, watching from across the street. When he waved at them earlier, it wasn't just a hello, it was a signal. He knew they'd have his back when the time came. And now, that time was here, and Karen was stuck with egg on her face. The neighbors couldn't stop talking. "I can't believe it," a woman in a pink shirt said, laughing. "She called the cops on herself," a boy with a skateboard added, giggling so hard he almost fell over. The little kid who'd bought Timmy's Pokemon cards ran back, waving them in the air. "Timmy's the coolest," he shouted. Even the dog down the street barked, like it was cheering too. Officer Mike put a hand on Timmy's shoulder. "Good job, kid," he said with a wink. "You handled this like a champ." Timmy grinned up at him, his eyes shining with pride. He wasn't scared of Karen anymore, he'd turned her big plan upside down, and everyone saw it. Karen just stood there, her arms crossed tight, looking like she wanted to disappear. Her flip-flops didn't flap anymore, they just stayed still, stuck to the ground. The big reveal was out, Timmy wasn't alone. He had family in the police, and he'd played it smart. Karen thought she could boss him around, but she'd picked the wrong kid to mess with. The neighbors cheered louder, and the air felt electric, like lightning might strike. This wasn't just a garage sale anymore, it was a showdown, and Timmy had won. Karen knew she was in trouble now. Her face was still red, and she started talking fast, trying to wiggle out of it. "It's just a misunderstanding," she mumbled, her voice all shaky. "I didn't mean it like that." She waved her hands around, like that would make everything okay. But Officer Mike wasn't buying it. He shook his head and looked right at her. "Next time, talk to people before you call us out for nothing," he said, his voice strong but not mean. He tipped his police hat a little, like a cowboy in a movie, and turned back to Timmy. Karen didn't know what to do. She looked at the neighbors, but they weren't on her side anymore. They were smiling, clapping, and cheering for Timmy. She huffed one last time, her flip-flops flapping weakly as she turned around. She slinked back to her house, her head down low, like a dog who'd been caught chewing shoes. The crowd kept cheering louder as she disappeared through her front door. She was defeated, and everyone knew it. Justice had been served, and it felt so good. Timmy. He was the real star now. With Karen gone, he got back to work. People crowded around his tables, picking up toys, comics, and even that rusty lamp. "How much for this?" a man asked, holding up a toy robot. $2. Timmy said with a grin. The man handed over the money, and Timmy tucked it into his little cash box. Kids ran up with quarters and dollars, grabbing Pokemon cards and action figures. Even the lady who'd been whispering earlier bought a stack of old books. Timmy sold every single thing that day, every toy, every comic, every bit of junk Karen had complained about. When the tables were empty, Timmy counted his money. His eyes got big as he flipped through the bills and coins. He had enough for that shiny new bike he'd been dreaming of. And guess what? There was even some extra left over. He stuffed the cash in his pocket and ran to the ice cream truck that rolled by. "1 chocolate cone, please," he said, handing over $1. The ice cream man smiled and gave him a big scoop. Timmy licked it happily, feeling like a king. The neighbors didn't laugh at his stuff anymore. Nope, they were all about Timmy now. A man in a red hat walked over and clapped him on the back. "You're the smartest kid on the block," he said, laughing. A lady with a dog nodded and said, "You showed that Karen who's boss." Even the little kid with the Pokemon cards came back and gave Timmy a high five. "You're awesome," he shouted. Everyone was smiling and talking about how Timmy turned a bad day into the best day ever. The street felt different now, like a big party. Officer Mike and the other cop waved goodbye and got back in their car. "See you at dinner, Timmy," Mike called out, winking. Timmy waved back, his ice cream dripping a little on his hand. The neighbors stayed out, chatting and laughing, like they were all friends again. Karen's house stayed quiet, her curtains shut tight. She didn't peek out anymore, she'd learned her lesson. Timmy sat on his porch, finishing his ice cream. He looked at the empty tables and smiled big. He'd won not just the money, but the respect of everyone around him. The junk they'd laughed at was gone, and now they all saw him as the kid who stood up and came out on top. It was a happy ending, and Timmy knew he'd earned it. And that's how it all happened. Timmy, just a kid with a smart plan, turned Karen's nosy trouble into the biggest win ever. He didn't yell or cry. He stayed cool and used his brain to come out on top. Sometimes, the smallest person in a fight has the biggest heart. They don't need to be loud or tall, they just need the best tricks up their sleeve. Timmy showed us that even when someone tries to push you down, you can stand up and surprise them. So, next time someone tries to boss you around or make you feel small, don't get mad. Just smile. They might not see what's coming, just like Karen didn't. You've got your own power inside you, waiting to shine. Maybe it's a clever idea, a kind heart, or a sneaky way to win the day. Whatever it is, you can be like Timmy, quiet but strong, ready to turn things around. What did you think of Timmy's big moment? Did it make you cheer? Drop your thoughts below, I'd love to hear what you liked best. You're awesome, and I bet you've got some cool tricks too.